On March 27th, 2013, I got an interesting phone call that most parents will never want to have. I was actually on a Zoom call with a business owner in Canada, and my wife called twice, and we have this little rule where if you call twice, that means it's kind of urgent. So I picked up the phone, and I remember this so vividly, and I said, "Hey babe, what's up?" And she said, "Nick, there's been a shooting at the Covenant School." I said, "What?" She said, "Nick, there's a shooter at the kids' school." In that moment, I was confronted with a very unique decision. My children, for context, are 5 and 7. And I was met with this very unique moment of choosing a belief or a feeling of how I thought this whole situation was going to go down. So immediately in my body, you have that immediate adrenaline rush and reaction. And so I'm in my office, I'm right across the street from the school. So I pop my door open and I fly down that hallway, and my wife's on the phone, and I'm running literally as fast as I can. I'm pushing people out of the way through that hallway. And I get to the elevator and I'm just smashing the elevator button as hard as I can. And while I'm doing that, I hear my wife just hysterically crying on the other line. And she said, "I hope my babies are okay." And I said, "You listen to me right now. Our kids are fine." And she said, "Yeah, but how do you know that?" And I said, "You have to believe me. Our kids are okay." What would you say? I want you to actually think about that for a moment. What would you say in that moment? And if we're being really honest, how many of you in the room would suggest, "I actually have no idea what I would say"? Just raise your hand. That's about 95% of people. A lot of folks might think that through that decision of just making a choice to say, "Yeah, no, everything's fine," that I'm being delusional, or that I'm overwhelmed by the moment, and I probably need to do a lot of therapy to figure out what else I would do to respond in that moment than choosing a belief versus an emotion. Well, here's what you don't know. The year before, I took a sabbatical for 12 months, and I did 100 therapy sessions in a year. Those ended 2 weeks before this shooting happened. Isn't that interesting? And in those therapy sessions, I was just on this quest to figure out something deeper about life and how to address the beliefs that I had, the lies that I believed, that I knew deep within inside myself were not true. But at the same time, I needed a way to expel those things, to see the world in a different way so I could pursue something that was more meaningful. And so through that experience, I encountered a Taoist monk, out of all people. He spent 45 years as a psychologist. He was a Taoist monk. He lives in the UK. And I booked a conversation in the call with him, and he gave me a formula to life that I'm going to share with you today that completely changed everything. He said this a year prior. He said, "Nick, there are events that are going to happen in your life. If you choose to have a feeling or an emotional experience immediately after that life event, it's going to generate and create belief systems for you that won't serve you." He said, "So what I want you to do, because that is called the carousel of despair, life events, emotions, and then having beliefs that are concrete and now anchored into the emotion." He said, "Nick, what I want you to do is when you have a life event, especially those that are most challenging, I want you to protect your emotions and your feelings and insert your beliefs in the middle." So what did I believe? When my wife called me, I took on that format. I took on that moment to say, I believe that my kids are okay. I chose to have audacious belief. I chose to believe in the impossible. I didn't have any context. I didn't have any proof. As I continued down this journey, I got outside, bursted through the front doors of my office building, and I could see the parking lot of where the kids were gathering and the teachers were gathering just outside the building. And so while I'm running up there, I see my son coming down with the kindergarten class. They were the ones who crossed the road on Hillsborough Road. And I see him coming down hand in hand with his classmates. And I gave that kid the biggest hug you could ever imagine. And I just looked in his eyes. I said, "You good?" He said, "Yeah, Dad, I'm good." The second one was a little harder because they didn't know where my daughter was. Took about an hour and a half to figure it out. So I was met with the secondary challenge of, can I hold this belief for long enough to not allow fear to override an audacious belief? Let's call it faith, of trusting something greater that's out there. And so I was met with the second conversation. What you don't know about me, besides the 100 therapy sessions the year before, is that my wife's father was a victim of gun violence. And my wife, Ashley, and I have been married for 10 years. I've dealt with the nightmares. I've dealt with the feelings. I've dealt with the emotions and coached through the beliefs. Her father was killed in 1992. She was 3 years old. He was murdered. This is the second time that we've had to stare this thing in the face. Again, the question is, what belief would you hold? What could you tell yourself so that you knew that it was true to protect the golden experience of your life? We got a text message about an hour and a half later, from my daughter's teacher. And she said, "London is fine, she's with me." It's amazing how in the context of your beliefs that you can be right. And for some people, they were less fortunate and they lost someone that they love. I'm not saying that my belief generated whatever the future outcome was. But what I am saying is that it was an anchor of hope, an anchor that led us through a really challenging experience, an anchor that brought us through life's most challenging circumstances. And I don't know what you're going through today. I don't know what you're facing today. I don't know what curveballs that life has brought you. But I'm here to encourage, even if it's just one person here today, I'm here to encourage you and to have you ask yourself the question of, what is your belief about your situation? What is it? Lean into that. Trust that there's something greater out there for you. Trust that there's something more meaningful that you can pursue. So in this process of unwinding, I can go back to that moment at 10:27 a.m., running up to my son, then seeing my daughter, and saying there was a belief, there was something greater, and there was a formula, an equation of life, that all of life's circumstances actually prepared me for the moment that I was in. I'm excited to stand here with you today and say that my kids are thriving. That they stood there and they looked death in the face. And when someone asked me the question of, "So are you going to send your kids back to the school?" I said, "You listen to me right now. I love that little frame, man. That comes from a deep anchor." I said, "My kids will march back up that hill. They will not allow themselves, and I won't, as the guardian of their life, allow them to cower in fear." I think the thing that's most noble about finding a sense of safety is choosing when you're safe to be brave. Over the summer, Dr. Catherine Kuntz created a plan for my daughter on her success map for her education. And she was an absolute hero that day. And in 6 weeks over the summer, my daughter tripled her scores between where she left in first grade and where she entered in second grade. See, the frame in which we see things, the perspective that we hold, always brings us to a place of what the outcome could be. So I'm here to encourage you today with this simple conversation to choose a belief that will anchor you. I believe that people are for me. I believe that my kids are incredibly resilient. And I believe that they're going to change the world. Thank you.